leaders everywhere, they go back to what we were talking about earlier, they need to understand that what they are leading is other people. They're leading human beings. They are leading people who have aspirations and hopes and difficulties. And I think that they need to understand that the value of each one of those human beings is no greater or no less than any other individual human being. I do believe in that ideal of equality. And that in the end, good leadership brings along all people and not just those who are the most influential or the most powerful. There will always be people who are more influential and more powerful. I just think that's probably the human condition. But I think good leaders need to be suspicious of that. One of the reasons why the United States has certainly existed for quite a long while as a nation, but it was founded on the principle that one should be suspicious of power. Not desire it, not think it is the thing most to be sought after, but it is the thing most to be distrusted. I think good leadership needs to, yes, it has to have power, but it needs to use that power in a humane way. That doesn't mean that tough decisions can't and shouldn't be getting made. Yes, really tough decisions. And the really tough decisions are ones in which there will be some bad consequences to whatever decision you make. So we're not living in a Pollyanna-ish world here where everything's going to end up in an ideal way. But I think if you keep hold of that ideal of equality of individuals, fundamental, basic human equality, it's what the whole human rights movement worldwide is basically about. That in a world which has now well more than 6 billion people and has massive communication, transportation, globalization, that this sense of treating people with some fundamental equality is a basic important quality that many leaders will be good to think about and to reflect upon.
First one is to understand the fact that the world is changing very, very fast around us, and it will continue to do so. So it's very important that leaders understand that they need to be able to adapt their views to a world that is changing. So if I can only repeat to you how I can do things now, and I have no way how to think, then tomorrow the world changes, I don't know what to do. So leaders have to be people that know how to think in a world that is changing. I think second, they need to be courageous, because in many areas there are lots of changes that need to be made in politics and in education. So they need to be willing to make reform, and sometimes reforms need to be quick and deep and may create winner and loser, but they need to have the courage to take those kind of decision. And three, they have to be honest, because honesty is obviously critical. If you're not honest, sooner or later, you're not going to be a good leader.
Korean parents are notoriously heavy-handed when it comes to the education of their children. Have you any advice for them?
College and law school is a time to both appreciate the contribution that your parents have made to you, but also to realize that you have to live your own life, and you have to figure out how to best create a balance between parental pressures on the one hand and what you want to do for yourself on the other hand. It's probably the hardest thing that comes out. I went through that myself very much. So I came from an Orthodox Jewish background, and my parents were disappointed that I did not remain Orthodox, and they wanted to see me succeed as an Orthodox Jew. And I think my mother is still disappointed that I haven't remained within the tradition of orthodoxy. And I think inevitably we're going to see disappointed parents in the Korean community. We will see intermarriage, which every traditional community worries about. We're going to see people changing traditions, perhaps giving up on their original languages. And I think it's one of the hardest challenges that people face. I think that tradition is very important. I'm a very proud Jew. I'm very proud that my Jewishness remains very much part of my identity, but I'm also an American secularist, and I think that the great challenge for Korean students is going to be to strike that appropriate balance, not to reject tradition. It's easy if you just reject tradition and become a kind of white Anglo-Saxon Korean at Harvard. That's easy, and that's not fulfilling. And it's also very easy to simply accept the tradition completely and reject the modern, contemporary, broad culture. The hard thing is to get the most you can out of the tradition. Retain as much of it as you can, consistent with your own personal needs to change and develop.
I would say it would be hypocritical or insincere of me simply to say, lighten up, let them go, don't worry. I would say I say sympathetically to Korean parents, having had parents who are, if not heavy-handed, at least quite concerned and present and interventionist, and being such a parent myself, that it's good to be this way, but it's also, of course, good to understand that your children are not your own property. They'll do what they want to do and need to do, especially if your relationship to them is healthy. You have to accept that they will do that, even though I tore my hair out and grinded my teeth. You accept it. It's not just about parental obligation. I emphasize that it's about pleasure. But you have to, of course, be in the mindset to take pleasure in it. That is to say, you have to stop doing what you're doing and do the other thing, attend to your children, but not only because it's an obligation, ethical or moral or whatever, to attend to your children, but because it's actually pleasurable. It's fun. And what I would say to any parent is that if it's only gritting your teeth and doing it because you think it's important, it's probably not going to work anyway. It's not going to be good for anyone, yourself or your children. It has to actually make sense and be enjoyable. And since learning is enjoyable, genuinely, or at least it should be enjoyable, then even things like trigonometry and algebra that I didn't come naturally to me, actually you can take pleasure in. And the things that come naturally, one can take huge pleasure in. But it has to be, I think, it has to have some delight or experience of wonder in it, for you as well as for the children.
I think my parents, in many ways, have been too push is not the right word. They were, it's good to push your children, but my parents were a little bit too anxious. Now, when I was a kid, I didn't see that, but now I see they were a little bit too anxious. That you can push your child, but if you should not make a tragedy whether once you get a bad grade or to be always make your. My parents made me a little bit too scared in some ways. I mean, pushing is fine, but they made me a little bit too anxious. So I was very anxious before exams. I was extremely anxious if I wouldn't get the absolutely perfect grade. I remember having a bad, not even a bad, but not so good grade in the first year of junior high, which was the 6th grade. And my mother made such a, not as much of a scene, but she was so worried, and she was such a an event for the family that I still remember the whole day and the whole thing. So I think they made the mistake of communicating too much anxiety. So they could have pushed just as hard, but with a little bit less of a feeling of with a catastrophe incumbent on your head. So that in terms of if I had to give an advice to my parents, would be to be a little bit less anxiety producing.
So my advice to Korean parents would be to, if you want me to put it directly, I don't know that I would have put it so directly myself, but I would say be careful, because too much pressure damages. And we all know that heavy-handed policies in government and heavy-handed policies in business don't usually work out well. They end up meeting resistance and producing what they're designed to prevent. Communication is so important. Young people have thoughts and feelings of their own. It's very hard often for parents to find out what they are. But you don't find out unless you ask. And you don't find out unless you ask and are willing to listen without jumping on them and immediately criticizing them. Because then if you ask again, you're not going to get any answer. Because your child doesn't want to go through that pain again. You have to have a little room there for, you wouldn't buy clothes for your child that fit just perfectly all the time. You always buy clothes that are a little too big for your child so they can grow into them. And I would say the same thing about attitudes towards education. Leave a little room to grow. Just have some freedom of choice built in. And if parents let children know that if children work hard and do their best, that matters. That matters more than being the best, in a way. Because if you work hard and do your best, then you might be the best. It's your best chance of being the best. You won't be the best in everything, but maybe you'll be awfully good in a number of things. And